Today's chat is brought to you by the support of all our Twitch subscribers. Through the patronage you provide the Focus Fire chat team through the Twitch platform, we are able to provide you with the weekly podcast as well as the website and other aspects of Focus Fire chat. If you have any interest in becoming a subscriber of the FFC and gaining access to some exclusive features over in the Discord server, please be sure to visit our Twitch account and click on the subscribe button. If you're an Amazon Prime member, remember that you do have a free subscription to Twitch every month that can be used for this. And for those of you who are already subscribers, thank you again for your generosity.
You may have heard the whispers of guardians gathering in the shadows, exploring the mysteries of this world and the worlds which surround us. We are all in search of truth. Sometimes we need to focus that search. Focus that fire. And so we come together. Welcome to Focused Fire Chat.
Welcome to Focus Fire Chat, recorded live on May 22nd, 2020 over on twitch.tv/FocusFireChat. As always, I want to give a big shout out to our live chat here with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us once again. This week's episode is going to be focused around exploring what could possibly lie ahead within Destiny. This particular episode will serve as what we have come called the intro session of the week's exploration, and fair warning, it's probably going to be the only episode. We'll probably pair it with the top 3 that you would have already heard by the time you hear this episode. Before we go any further, however, let's run through a quick introduction of who we have with us on the show. As always, this is your host, Blue Crew 86.
This is the in all white and a little bit of light blue green-eyed music lover. I changed my outfit on the game. I'm very proud of it.
I was like, I don't know what that means.
I generally, I've always in the past ran a very dark, blacks and greens, sometimes reds type character. Mm-hmm. And then I feel very, I don't know if this is a curse word, but I'm going to say it anyway. I feel very ballsy anymore in Crucible. So I'm in all white with a little bit of light blue now to go with my awoken complexion. It matches my blue eyes.
Very hunter of you to do the aesthetic. And last but definitely not in the least, in the hot-seated guest co-host, we have our good friend Garst0ne. Gar, how are you doing?
Not too bad. How are you guys doing? I know we've been talking a bit, but...
yeah, definitely.
My hunter's rocking Neopop Wave, because I'm rocking the 80s look.
I like it. That pink
and the blue. Oh, yeah. Yep. No pop wave for life. That's not coming off my hunter.
I like it. Yeah, no, since...
My Titan's the one that's all dark and gloomy and...
kind of...
So I'm in PvE, he's bright green.
I mean, happy Goth Day. We're recording this on May 22nd, 2020, so this is technically Goth Day, according to Raz's Twitter feed all day long today, but... Garst0ne and I actually met through Issacle a couple months ago. We played together on PS4. I believe it was on PS4.
Yeah, I don't play on any other platforms.
Yeah. And we got to chatting a little bit about lore on there, and I just wanted to do a quick rundown for the folks who may not know you. Where can they find you on the interwebs?
So you can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Garst0ne. That's Garstone. You can find me on Twitter, Garst0ne, but the O is a 0 because I can't get the other.
Somebody stole it.
Yeah, it's his name. Gary Stone. So yeah, I don't think he's ever given it up. But and then Discord PSN, same thing. Garst0ne.
Is it as in the same as your Twitch or same as your Twitter?
Twitch, same as my Twitch. Sorry.
Gotcha. Yep, just wanted to make sure, so if people wanted to find you, they can get a hold of you easily. So I wanted to start with our normal rundown of questions, Gar. What is your favorite lore story from Destiny?
My favorite lore from D1, so I played D1 a bit, up to House of Wolves, then I quit halfway through and then didn't come back till Cyrus.
Okay.
So my favorite lore be the Rasputin stuff, the Warmind. Happy with, DLC. I was super pumped for this season I've been very excited to find things out.
Yeah.
I was about to say, man, you're in hog heaven.
I'm in
right
heaven,
now.
yeah. And like when I found out that, and like the Iron Lords lore and the tie-in with that, so my friends finally took me through Wrath of the Machine 2 ago, for my first clear. So I got to kind of learn a bit of the lore and talk to Saladin, and I went through all the storyline for that. Got really sad because I had to kill the Iron Lords.
Yeah, I mean, Wrath of the Machine was a great raid back in D1.
So, the story mission killing Fellwinter and them in the Perfection Complex. Or no, what was the room?
Iron Tomb.
Yeah. So, that made me kind of sad. So, like, that whole story of Rasputin, the Warmine, tying the Siva into it, and then DLC, and then, and all that's kind of been my favorite. And then I guess the Fallen stuff. I love their story, and I'd love if they expanded more on it. We haven't really gotten a lot in Destiny 2 about Fallen, in my opinion, anyway.
Sure.
I wish they would expand more on, I'd like to learn more about the Whirlwind and like what actually happened to make the Fallen end up the way they are.
Why there's these different factions fighting over different things.
Well, like I understand the house, but like now there's really nothing left. So what's motivating them? And like I just want to know.
That's fair.
Well, like Mithrax and the House of Light and everything.
I'd love if they expanded that as well.
Yeah.
Speaking of Mithrax, we had that question the other day on Twitter on what if there's a house sigil tied to Mithrax.
Yeah.
I saw that. Did anybody find it?
The one that he's wearing right now is the same as House Dusk, which is arguably the same as House Rain. The difference being that instead of the deep-seated purple like that you normally see on it,
blue now, right?
It's a dark, like almost blood red. It's not quite as dark red as the Devil's, but it's like a very royal red.
Fun tidbit: when we do the mission on Titan, I actually did it the other day on my Warlock. It's gray during that mission. It's
that
not
mission,
red.
well, because he was with.
But he was running with Rain at that, or with
that point.
Dusk, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Was he?
He was with Dusk at the
I think he was still technically wearing Dusk color at that point, because the whole House Light thing really didn't, I think, come into full effect.
Not until later.
Until recently.
The 0 hour. Yeah, until right before 0 hour came out.
Well,
we had to do the mission and stuff. But he was supporting Guardians even back then, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think it was Xur, wasn't it, who helped
Xur was the one who over? Yes, Xur was the one who showed him kindness. Because he thought,
that's what turned.
That was the whole thing. He tried to jump off the cliff, and she was like, "Nope."
Well, and that's Xur helped him realize that not all
non-fallen are enemies.
Humanity, or
Yep.
And then some Guardians showed him kindness too. So
because he had
some of us chose not to kill him.
Well, and also he had the fire team that he was running with.
Oh yeah.
Well, that was after we saved him, though. That was after we didn't kill him.
Yes. Yeah. Our Guardian canonically didn't kill him.
So here's one more.
Interesting. It was a choice.
The option too. Yeah. Another question for you. Since you did not play after House of Wolves until after Curse of Osiris, I'm curious when you got into the lore of Destiny, because for me, I actually didn't really dive super deep into the lore until House of Wolves. It wasn't until that expansion that I actually got really sucked in. So I'm curious where you really found your passion for it.
So I got into the hype of Destiny during that first E3 announcement in 2012. So Destiny is the reason why I have a PS4. Play Destiny. So I caught up on every little tidbit I could until it got released, and then I think it was the alpha I played when it was just the moon missions. We had a couple of missions on the moon, and then you could just explore and dick around on there. But that started my, is there more to this game than just shooting aliens in the face and, collecting loot? And then that's when I started, not that, one did a great job in the lore / story department, but what was there intrigued me enough. The little tidbits, the ghost, when you do scan missions,
Mm-hmm.
you hear the speaker talk about, the golden age of humanity. And that's kind of what piqued my interest. And then the whole lead up to Era showing up in the tower,
Mm-hmm.
like that, I wanted to know more about the fire team that failed in the Hellmouth, and that kind of stuff really got to me. So I try to find every little, every scannable. That's when I started finding the ghosts, especially when the Reef came out, finding all the dead ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
Because that gave you I think those gave you the grimoire cards, right? So I'd read up on those on the website, which was kind of clunky, but it was all we had. So I try to.
For as much grief as Vanilla Destiny got for the storytelling, there are still so many people who are in love with the story that is there, that it makes you wonder if they really actually had too bad of a system back then.
So playing through it, I will say it was kind of bad. They could have done a better job, and we've heard about all the different things that happened.
Sure.
Now, with how things started going with Activision
stuff, yeah,
all that stuff. So, I understand. I just wish we could have seen had planned. Because you can see where they were going with certain things, and then it just kind of went. I mean, that still kind of happens now.
Yeah.
More meat to things than there was back then, but what was there was great because it let you to speculate, or just until you found something, predicted it, or helped you flesh out where your thinking was going. So they've done a really good job. I mean, the grimoire card stuff was kind of clunky, but it worked at the time.
I still think there's aspects of the grimoire that are a little better for the delivery
gathering
system.
The lore together. Yeah, we miss a lot of lore. If it wasn't for the Ishtar Collective, all the lore on the weapons and the different ships and the sparrows and all that really not pieced together stuff, we'd lose because they didn't really start building things until right.
Well,
we had those lore pieces.
The grimoire card also gave a sense of organization, I think, is the big thing for me that I miss about the grimoire
you
cards.
You could read.
Yeah,
it was the same story.
Yeah, it was implied that these were linked, maybe not necessarily in the order that you got them, which is fine, but at least we knew, topically, they were, the same category. Whereas with the lore
you
entries,
had Ghosts
it's
5, and then you're like, oh, okay.
Right.
There's 5 other cards I need to go find now.
There's at least 4 others somewhere out there.
And so that drove that kind of passion and interest. And that, so, getting the lore books, when Forsaken came out, that was one of my driving factors. I would, if there's new lore that came out, I was going to get it. That was kind of my goal. I would go and find what I could. Same as, try to read as much as I could on all the different armor and the weapons and stuff, and try to figure out where that all fit together. So I've spent, Ishtar Collective's been a lot of free reading.
Yes.
Trying to catch up and try to piece some of the story together. So I really enjoy the fact that they've done a really good job doing that.
Yeah.
The stories together that are really apparent that they are actually, related to each other.
Baxter and the Ishtar team have done this community, in particular the lore community, such a huge service by taking care of that website the way they have. I don't think this community would be nearly as well thought out or well fleshed out if they had.
I think there'd be more separation in the community if we didn't have that. We'd have very differing opinions that might not be correct if we didn't have that to piece everything together. Thing that keeps me in is the grimoire books that they've been putting out. So I own both of the available volumes, so I've been reading those. It was really cool because I missed out on like the whole Touch of Malice stuff.
Oh yeah.
So that's in the first grimoire. Like I knew about the Books of Sorrow before because they mentioned that in the Dark Below. You didn't really get to read too much about it because it wasn't available till the calcified fragments and stuff.
Yes. That is how you got those lore cards.
Yeah, but like there was always that inkling, you heard about it from the World's Grave when your ghost scans it. He mentions, in the Books of Sorrow, it says this. You're like, okay, well, what are the Books of Sorrow? So getting to read those was pretty cool in the anthology. And then the Touch of Malice stuff. And,
Fun fact, as far as I was just going to say, fun fact, the return of a Touch of Malice-like weapon, it's not Touch of Malice, is Tommy's Matchbook. The same mechanics in it. Yeah,
that's what I've heard. So it's helped, it helped me find out that Eris was still, a major player in that whole situation and stuff. So those grimoire anthologies have helped catch me up quite a bit because like the second one's all about the Fallen and it has all the Wrath of Machine stuff that I might have missed, like that whole background and stuff. So
I think it's nice too that Bungie started putting those out just so people who may not have dived into the lore so much back in the day, and for those of us who did dive into the lore but don't know what's considered canon and what's not anymore, because technically all those lore cards are gone.
They're not, well, that's a different debate for a different time.
Yeah, but anyway, it's nice to have that reaffirmed, interesting lore cards in the background. All right, I think you kind of actually already answered the last question, which was, what is your primary class? You mentioned that you played Titan.
Titan, always going to be a Titan. I do play all three, but Titan is the character that I brought forward from D1. It's the only character I had played in D1. I do have a Warlock and a Hunter in D1, but they haven't even made it through the intro quests yet. So,
do you have a primary subclass that you play with it? Or do you just use all of them?
I stick with... Lately, I've actually been a Thunder Crash Titan in PvP, just because it's so much fun doing the Ballistic Slam. Flying through the air. So in D1, I was a Striker. I was a Death from Above guy. I loved that, flying through the air and slamming down. So
a little bit of Halo-esque feel to it.
I never played Halo, so but I got the, just that flying through the air and slamming down on people. Just but when I started playing D2, Sunbreaker, the lore behind the Sunbreakers and flaming hammer at people is really fun, and I laugh all the time when I do it.
You're one of those people.
Are you a little hammers, or are you a big hammer when you do your Sunbreaker?
I like the...
Because
That's a great question, Green. Such a great question.
I actually like I used to like the Code of the Devastator, so the big hammer. But I've been leading more on they call it the Siegebreaker, the one with the sunspots.
Okay.
I've been leaning on that one a lot more than the other ones. But I've played all three. For a long time, I did Top Tree. I don't remember what they call that one, but I like the little explodey hammers.
Yeah, the ones that are basically like mini grenades that will wait until you touch them and then blow you up.
Well, no, I like when you throw the hammer and explodes on the thing that it impacts and throws like little pieces of it all over the place.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So Pens says Metal Tree Dune Marchers. Okay. Way more fun. I do Dune Marchers with Devastator because I feel like Thor. I throw the little hammer and it does the lightning. So when you throw the hammer, if you have linear actuators activated, it does the lightning around it when it impacts. Sure, it just doesn't come back to you when you throw it. That's all. Sunbreaker. I love that hammer.
That is
actually my Worm Gods for that.
If you want a bow build, that's actually the bow build that Dwyer will use. He will do Le Monarch and that middle tree with the tiny hammer, and he'll use this hammer as his final shot.
Yeah, I get it. It does enough damage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Especially if it's with Worm Gods on.
You don't have to worry about switching weapons. Yeah. He's pretty gross with that. But
I don't use Antea swords. I've never used them because I just don't slide enough. I like flying through the air more than sliding on the ground. So.
And this is why we're friends.
I mean, if we had Twilight Garrison, I'd be all over that. I missed the days of Twilight Garrison, but I've seen what it can do. Yeah, that would be my go-to exotic if it was around. So.
Sure. Well, Blue, I think we are ready to move on to the topic of the night, the looking forward topic. How do we want to start this?
I guess just really, obviously since we're going to be talking about, I guess, if you did not get the clue from the title, we're not going to hold back on spoilers that have been released in game. Granted, by the time this comes out, you should well be aware of everything that we're going to probably be talking about. But just in case you somehow have missed those updates, that, just fair warning, Fellwinter's Lie and all that stuff is fair game. So I think that is the only really caveat that I was kind of planning on, like, being like, hey, don't be surprised about that piece. Other than that, really, I'm curious. It's going to be kind of a little bit more freeform conversation than, this book says this. But I'm just kind of curious what your guys' thoughts were like around. For me personally, I'm more interested in like seeing what could possibly happen with like the city and from a political standpoint more than
so starting with humanity and where we think they're going, or if they're going anywhere.
If they're going anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the big question is, do we save the last city from the Almighty crashing into it?
I'm pretty sure we are going to. How that's going to play out, like, I mean, the Almighty is really massive, so
sure.
Apart into tiny little pieces with, if the city's going to survive.
The thing that I worry about with that is they really haven't built it up besides it's this incoming impact, this impending doomsday countdown, right? Like that's the mechanic they're using it as. With that being main drive, do we think that it's actually like, is it just going to disappear? Because if we take it out with the help of Rasputin, it's
still have debris.
There's debris, and it's kind of anticlimactic because we haven't had that much to do with it besides
I think,
the
honestly,
towers.
What, I don't know if this is what's going to happen, but I think it would be, this is my more sadistic side kind of showing through, but I personally think it would be hilarious if we make it miss Earth and instead hit another planet. And it's not the darkness that takes out another planet, it's actually us. Like, I'm like,
the way of Rasputin.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, it's because of our actions, actually, that we destroy something rather significant.
Sorry, Mercury.
Yeah, well, and I mean, like, it's probably going to, I still think it's going to be Titan, but, whatever. I don't know. So, it can't be Mercury because it's already left Mercury.
No. So, have you guys seen any of the spoilers and leaks that have been coming out? I don't know how accurate, obviously, because they're leaks, but according to Game Rant article that this week, the actual planet disappearing or the moon disappearing is Titan, according to that article.
To me, I have not seen that. The reason I wouldn't be surprised by Titan is just simply because of the whole Krakenmare thing all of a sudden popping back up. There was really, like, there's
no reason for
nothing to connect to it except for another sudden catastrophe.
Well, there's another thing that Black Flag mentioned to me in a different stream earlier today, is that if you look at Sloane's inventory,
It says limited time on it.
It does. It's listed as a limited
It's
time.
still there?
I don't think I'm pretty sure. I don't think there's any other vendor in the system that has that.
Well, Anna's was doing it too, so I don't know if that's just UI glitch or...
I don't know about that, because I guess my only thought there is could that be because of a weekly reset? Honestly, I don't pay attention to planetary vendors anymore.
Right.
So I'm the worst person to...
That's why I'm asking if other vendors have it as well, because
I know it came up. I saw it on Twitter, and somebody posted a picture of Anna's...
Oh, Pin says in chat there is always a weapon that is for a limited time.
No, but it was on the emblem, not...
Oh, it was like on just like general inventory. Mm-hmm. I mean, again, to me, like taking all the little, spoilers or leaks or whatever, just from like a story standpoint, I still think Titan just makes the most sense.
Sure.
If we're gonna have
the lore from Kraken
Mare, and then you had the double down of the Kraken Mare lore with the whole hacking of Zavala's ghost, or take whatever you want to call it, taking control by Rasputin. Like, I don't know. Like, to me, it's weird because there's like the context doesn't exist really for that whole story in my head. The
other thing that you have to remember is that the primary protagonist on Titan was, or like not the protagonist, the antagonist was the Savathûn tie-in, and Savathûn's now so tied into the Dreaming City. Does it even make sense that Titan's around at this point? Because is she fighting on two fronts, or is she fighting on one front? Where is her home base?
Because the other thing is the other really current thing with Savathûn is actually on Io. It's not on Titan, because that's the whole what's the
Festering core?
Yeah,
the Festering core.
Yeah. Because there's the whole debate between Zavala and Eris about knowing what she's going to do.
Yeah. There's that. So
which makes me sad because Titan's really I actually really like Titan. Like I really want to know.
Dude, I want more. I want more arcology. There's so much there.
Well, it's not even really just the arcology. It's like the whole thing. Like the whole thing with Titan was that it was a human project to try to replicate, what the Traveler did. So there's so much wealth of information that would be really cool to see. But the other reason I kind of pick on Titan is because you see the abuse of power by an Exo and by Rasputin. And with the whole thing,
Rasputin, it was,
And so like with the whole thing with this whole, the Fellwinter's lie thing.
What did they find on Titan that caused him to hunt down that?
Well, it was the same. I still argue that it was the same thing that they found on the moon. It's connected to the
other anomaly.
The anomaly was communicating with something out in deep space, right? And we now have Anna has experienced the deep space anomaly. Osiris has experienced the deep space anomaly, and Osiris actually brought it. And like Osiris actually went into the anomaly. Anna and I think Jinju was the one that was like, "Let's get out of here."
Get out of here. Yeah.
And Rasputin was with her, which I still, if I remember the timing, I think
through
it was
the helmet.
Well, I think it was because of that encounter that he was able to tell Osiris about that. I want to say that was the timing thing. So, I mean, like, I don't know. Like, I to be honest, if I had a choice, I would get rid of, honestly, I'd get rid of Earth because I'm like...
the EDZ.
I'm like, it's just I don't
too
know.
Much tied to it, though.
But the Earth, and that's like the thing. EDZ and the dark or like the shard and everything, it's so stinking important to a lot of the story.
And the plague lands are still there. The
full disclosure, I don't see it happening. But like, for
I would
me,
rather them get rid of Nessus. Like, I like failsafe, but I don't.
I mean, Leviathan's still eating Nessus.
That's what I was about to say. Nessus is just like Titan. Actually, there is a looming threat that it would very neatly explain Nessus being taken out.
What if they got rid of both? Let's do that.
Honestly, I'm okay with that because I mean, Nessus. The only reason Nessus to me stands out is because of the connection to the Vex.
Everyone's mad at me in chat because of failsafe. disappearing at that
Phil,
point.
okay, but this is okay. Hear me out though.
Evacuate.
And this is we've seen, and we kind of talked about this before we started the recording. We have now evidence that an AI level entity can be put into a platform. So
a different one.
I don't want failsafe running around for multiple reasons. Not the least of which would be the whole Chronicon tie-in at that point. But
right. Well, I mean,
no.
Yeah, how true. Yeah. Then you bring the Chronicon in, but I don't want to because I don't believe in it.
But you want to get those sweetmeats, Green.
I
don't think we're gonna see, like, we're gonna save the city through Rasputin. Almighty's gonna get blown up. Happen.
I would.
The last city is going to go anywhere because then we start. The last city disappears. Then, in a way,
what's the point?
Well, Bungie supporting the dead orbit at that point.
Yes, I was just about to say we have the Ghost Fragment dead orbit with the mobile fleet.
Right? Like, well, that's dead orbit's whole philosophy is take everybody in the city, get the heck out of here.
Decentralize the threat. Yeah.
So I mean,
that's the point. What if we lose the Traveler completely?
I have that as a actual question. Actually,
yeah, you think?
My belief is we're not going to, but I mean,
there's a whole host of really fun rabbit hole questions that could bring up that I would be really excited to see. Like, not the least of which is what happens to Guardians because we are the Traveler's energy. Like, that's where we get our powers, is the Traveler's light. So if the Traveler is gone, what happens?
We lose our light. Yeah.
The Traveler allows us to channel it for sure.
Well,
the
ghosts allow us to channel.
Yeah, the ghosts, because we've always been described as those who are imbued with the Traveler's light.
Right.
So through the ghosts, the Traveler gives us.
Right, but the light itself, the power of the light isn't. We're able to use it because of the Traveler's connection to us. But the light itself is an energy force. If we're going to get into the Star Wars aspect, it's a force that.
It is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, keep going. Green.
What if this is way out there in left field? What if the Traveler gets destroyed completely, but we figure out a way to actually? I know. You know where I'm going.
I'm so excited.
I know you're excited that we actually are able to utilize the light on our own without the need of a Traveler being the godparent that's giving us the ability, kind of thing. It's just, I don't know how to describe it.
It's an interesting thought.
It's a return to the shamanistic model that we saw kind of being presented within the Taken King. And then also, we also have evidence of a alternate source of power with the shard of the Traveler. And so but
it's still part of the Traveler, though.
Right. But if the Traveler gets destroyed, similar to the Almighty, it's still going to have debris. And we've proven that the residual
but the Traveler is still alive to keep that shard.
Right, but is it the Shard of the Traveler, us attuning ourselves to the Shard of the Traveler, means that if the big part of the Traveler, the normal Traveler, if that got destroyed, would we still technically have our powers because we were attuned to the Shard, not the base of the Traveler?
Right.
That would also imply the aspect of perhaps you don't have to have the Traveler at this point. Perhaps you only need to be attuned to even a portion of it. And how does that even work?
Well, that goes back into our ghost actually from the Traveler.
Love that debate, you know that.
Oh no, I know. But but going along, that's an easy way to answer that debate is if the ghosts are actually made of the pieces of Traveler, then you would say, no, the Traveler doesn't need to be there if all you need is a fragment of the Traveler, because you have a fragment of the Traveler traveling around in your backpack.
Yeah, but it's a channel. The Traveler is still giving us powers. It doesn't come from the ghosts. They pull their power from Traveler. So the way I look at this is if you look back in, how honest can we believe the Books of Sorrows? But when they talk about the the gift spire,
Mm-hmm.
that was imbued with the Traveler's light, but it was still the Traveler was still alive, so they still gained the power.
Sure.
The question comes down if the Traveler dies, I don't think those shards would still. It's only because they have a connection to the Traveler still that they're still active.
Is that the case though? Because of
That's my belief. That's my belief. That's my belief. I don't think
there is a scannable in the EDZ that calls out that it's not necessarily connected, because it's a commingling of the Traveler's light with something darker or something more. I can't remember if it's the word
because it's been broken. They use
darker.
Not necessarily darkness, but it's darker, and I think that's why we're able to walk Shin's a line that he was looking for in a Guardian. Well, that's why he backed off. We were able to bridge the two because of our connection to that shard that's been corrupted.
I don't necessarily think that's the case, because Shin wasn't necessarily connected to that shard.
But he was looking for somebody that was able to walk both lines.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I think that is another topic to come up. It was something that came up quite a bit on Twitter today, is the idea of us utilizing darkness versus light in the future. We've already been towing that line.
I don't think, because Shin said if we do dip down there, he's going to come back and kill us. So I don't think we're going to go that route. I don't think that's where Bungie wants us to go, especially with the story. I mean, you start embracing the darkness, we're no longer the heroes of humanity. It's kind of the role we've been playing. We're the last hope of the only ones that have been doing anything in the world, right? It always comes down to us to save everybody. So I don't think that is going to happen. Because then we're not. Again, that's the way I look at it. I don't think we're going to get that power just because we become the exact opposite of what we've been the whole time.
Sounds good. Blue, do you have a tie into that?
That is along the lines of my thoughts. Not only that, but like the whole, like, breaking the fourth wall there too. You would have to have a lot more player freedom, because you would have to then allow for players to choose more than just 3 subclasses. You would have 6 subclasses basically, or 5 subclasses, or whatever, because if you're going to have a darkness, you're going to have a dark mirror of each one, arguably. But like that much, I mean, this is me kind of breaking fourth wall, but the whole thing about losing a planet is that they don't want to tax more resources, and so like losing a planet is one thing because that's a play space, and I can see how that frees up a lot of space. But then turning around and being like, yeah, we're going to double everyone's subclass. It's like, I don't see that's going to free resources.
That's not what I mean, though. I don't necessarily think Dark Guardians is, at least in that respect, of having our Guardian have a darkness version of each subclass. I'm thinking more like Shin, where you're following a darker path. We've already been set on that path multiple times for various different reasons.
Right.
Whether it's killing Uldren and Forsaken, or the way that we handle things with Shadowkeep and Eris. There are a lot of different things that are a little bit not kosher as far as the quote-unquote being the light side of things versus the dark side of things. That's more of what I'm meaning. I'm not saying they're going to create a secondary class.
Well, and
but we've already redeemed ourselves from that by creating Lumina and cleansing the original Thorn, right?
I guess not to pick the bone on the whole Forsaken thing too, but it's also not canonically confirmed that we were the ones that killed.
We were the one that pulled the trigger. Yeah. No, but they haven't really said who's pulled that trigger yet. So.
Right. Well, and I hope, to be fair, I hope they don't, because then it allows the player the illusion of having that choice still. That's something.
Like, to me, I really think it was Petra that pulled it.
In my head canon, I like to think that too. because I
Straight up
to
potato
her,
at
she
this
had
point.
more. To her, it was more like getting to Uldren meant more to her than us. Killed her entire people. She failed the queen to keep them safe, right? He betrayed everything that the Awoken were. So I could see her take him out, you know, as revenge on
again, but then that again
killing
goes back
all the
to
Awoken.
I don't know. Like I have my own
Tangent.
opinion about the quote unquote morality that we have been given as Guardians, because really honestly we haven't been given that choice.
No.
And it just, to me, that bugs me, because I'm like, my experience with morality goes from like Fallout and, where it actually has an impact on the game. Like, I think putting a shoehorned, choice into a game, to me, is not the same as giving your players a choice. And I think that, as far as like, especially when you start talking about Guardians with light and dark and, yada, yada, I think that becomes even more important, to let your players have a choice. Like, let them choose. Does your Guardian walk the path of shadow, or do they stay in the light, or do they fully embrace the dark? And I know Pins had kind of answered, I know Green, you had put this question out on Twitter, I think earlier today, but like, that was one of the things, is like, if we're going to go down this road, then you got to let our choices have more impact. Like the Vanguard versus Drifter.
Well, give us the actual choice, and I don't think they're ever going to go that route.
Right. Which, I mean, don't mishear me. I am completely fine with them not actually giving us a choice, but then like on the flip side though, then don't pretend like you did. Like, don't call it a morality choice and then not have it impact.
Well, I mean, we've done fits the narrative they want to tell, right?
Right.
So there's been a morality thrown on us, but we got the choice, well, quote unquote, the choice to cleanse the original Thorn. Yes, we had to do some shady stuff, but we had to do shady stuff to even get Thorn in D1.
Right.
We had to go into the Crucible and kill people. Right?
The whole thing with that I like as a good example is the whole Vanguard Drifter debate, right? Like, I think that was an awesome quest, and it did really, I liked how, like, there was in that season a quote unquote cost to pay, because if you didn't choose the Vanguard, you didn't get the full lore book. Like, you literally didn't get the full story if you chose the Drifter. And there was a cost.
When you got to see that, let you see both sides, because the character Anor, how do you say her name?
Anor, yeah.
She saw Drifter as big bad evil man,
right?
So
she grew, and she then came, and then she grew, like she came to understand that it was like, oh, okay, this makes more sense. He
comes from, like, the Drifter's a really good example of what our Guardian could be, because he comes from a different time before the Guardians, and he's never embraced the Vanguard. He's never embraced to follow that rigid structure. He's that gray path.
So where would you take the story then? If the Guardians...
With humanity, or just overall?
I was just thinking in regards to the idea of
the Gray Guardian or whatever.
Yeah. Where would you take the story in regards to that? Or would you even take it, or would you just be like...
I think we're already in that Gray Guardian. To me, we're in that Gray Guardian.
I mean, I think my hesitation is, like, if you go down that path...
It's really hard. It's really hard, because you look at how the Fallen see us. We're the big bad evil people destroying their way of life, right? Like, and you start getting to the whole perspective thing. You look at that, but
well, and I mean, the other thing too is, like, if we're going to go down that path, then figuratively, or literally speaking too, you have to have a story for each path, and like what's the cost, like.
And we don't have the development time,
right? And that's what that's where ultimately I'm going to come down to. I don't see it happening because of the outside of game resources limitation, which I'm completely whatever. That's fine. I completely understand that. Like if we had all the resources in the world, I would absolutely love to see an actual moral path, hey, your choice here is you take this bounty to assassinate this one character. You see another Mithrax quest line where if you chose to kill the NPC, your guardian actually has, a renown system or, something like a faction standing system that is tallying up stuff. The problem with
so kind of like the World of Warcraft style.
Yeah. Or like Fallout, again, Fallout, the moral system of that.
When I used to play World of Warcraft, like you could fight, back one faction, but it made your standing with the other one.
Yeah. So I mean, and
really
it's
bad,
like,
right?
But in the thing that's interesting there is, you have to merge the whole thing with this MMO-esque thing that they keep trying to do. And how do you do that within, canonical storytelling?
The constraint.
Which I think the answer there would be have your system based off bounties, not have them based off story missions. Like, you get X amount of NPC, how you accomplish the bounty is more important than if you accomplish. And then you can say canonically that this character was, this NPC X was killed, but the method in which they were handled affects the morality of, or the allegiance, the overall allegiance to a specific faction. Your Dead Orbit faction is not, if you choose to side with Spider, Dead Orbit's not going to like you because he keeps stealing their shipments. Actually have a balance between the factions. Making the factions relevant would make me want to come back so much more because I actually really care about what's going on with those stories. I'm really interested in how the factions
gives you that player buy-in.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it also gives you a pulse on what's going on within the city. Like that to me is what I care about.
And that's one thing that is kind of missing. City's there and you just never.
Well, and that's why I know the Guardian games is a very touchy subject, but I mean that was why I was kind of disappointed when we didn't get Faction Wars back. We got the Guardian games. I was like, to me, the faction
that was the faction.
Well,
that
not
was
Faction Wars, but like Faction Rally.
That was the Faction Rally without calling it the Faction Rally,
right?
You just didn't
but it was a Faction Rally that you didn't have a choice on who you pledged allegiance to. Like, it was class instead of faction, which to me, the Faction Rally would have been so much more cool because it would have been an option to expand that story. That's a story I really want to see, is like, I want to see the development of that how are they handling the whole thing with the Vanguard being broken? How are they handling?
They're not going to, because the Almighty and the destruction of that's not going to happen.
We're going to pause everything to have Olympics in the middle of it.
And the stupid thing with the Almighty is like, yes, it's supposed to be a doomsday clock, but there's really no in-game oh my God, this is impending doom. I don't see the Almighty.
I don't know. I get what you're saying, Green, but at the same time, this city has been in game. The city has been bouncing from one emergency to another so much that it's like eventually the Piper's going to come for his bill. And
I want the city gone. I just destroy it and get rid of it. Get rid of the factions. Get rid of the stupidity tied to the factions. I'm sorry,
you're not going to get rid of factions. I mean, that's a human trait.
Why not? We can. You're going to get rid of the new monarchy if there's no city to have.
You mean get rid of the existing factions? I'm talking larger picture. You're always going to have factions. Humanity can't do anything without.
You're always going to have the bad guys and good guys, light versus dark thing too, but it's juvenile to think you're not going to have that.
Oh yes,
to be honest.
But that's what I mean. Is that's why I want to know the details of that story, is because with all that going on, it's like, I mean, okay, sure, let's get rid of the city, whatever. We still have the trauma. Now we have the extra trauma of, oh God, everything's that we love is dead and gone. But, you know, like, how are we going to do that? Like, that's where I'm really curious, and really that's what gets me kind of like excited about the story, is like, how do you respond to this stuff? Like, what is your politics? You know, how does that change in this time of a black swan event, you know, because that's what that is.
Here's my question, and please let me finish before jumping in on any of this. With the move into Shadowkeep, that direction of things getting very bleak and very dark, and our guardians having to deal with some very messed up stuff of their own past, and other guardians having to deal with their own past themselves, like Eris, do we think that the tie-in with Eris and Mara and Savathun and all that stuff that happened on the moon with that pyramid is going to tie in very strongly to this next season because of everything going on with Rasputin? Are they going to actually put those threads together in this tapestry?
No.
I'm hoping that they bring some story threads together, but with my friends the other day, and Bungie has, in my opinion, been really bad at finishing story threads and tying them down. Like this, the Lie Quest finally tied some D1 story threads.
And that's been in the works for 4 years.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see that. We're going to see the culmination of, you know, Becker. We finally figure out what she's been doing, what she's been up to. I don't think we're going to see Savathun. I don't think we're going to see the Pyramid Fleet till the fall. Then that's the cynical look at it, just because they've done such a bad job at threads, in my opinion.
The thing is that's what keeps you coming. That's
yeah,
the thing.
But like I've been pretty disappointed, and there's a lot of story threads that I'm totally hyped about, and then it just goes.
That's just maybe because they're waiting for it to actually come out.
So the biggest one that got me was, you know, you waited 12 weeks for Truth to Power to finish. With you know, we got the lore book, the last P, and that was it. You know, there was no. So we know we got the Truth to Power. Now we know what's going on. Blah blah blah. You know, I don't have a very bright. It's coming next season. I don't think it's going to tie up any story threads. I think they're going to introduce new ones or add more lore and just not answer anything. I
think like the whole thing with Eris and Mara is like, I mean, the whole thing with her, and I think Green, you mentioned this too about the connection there with Savathun. Savathun has been set up as like the next really big bad until we get closer to the resolution with the pyramids, whatever that resolution is. I don't see Savathun, like there might be murmurs of Savathun's movements, but I don't see that particular story thread jumping out fully, because that's not the cadence that this story has taken.
Mm-hmm. I think we'll get something for that story in the fall.
I think we'll get something that will continue. I don't see them abandoning it, but I don't see necessarily like a resolution tie-in or anything like that. Like not a big tie. You know, I just, and that's simply because right now the current big thing is these Dorito ships. The Almighty is the immediate problem, right? That's hopefully going to get resolved at the end of this season. After that, then we have the onslaught of, you know, the Doritos. We got to figure that out. And then that's going to put us in, what will that be? Season 12, which will be the ultimate end to the year, I think, right? Which I think at that point, if we're going to go with like cadence of, you know, stories that we've seen in the past, maybe at the end of that season, we'll get, you know, a big reveal of, you know, next season, we go up against something that starts the arc of Savathun's invasion, or something like that. But like I think right now the focus, that at least as I have seen it, has been this whole corrupting force from the pyramids, which, I mean, I still want to know how Guardians are dealing with the massive amount of trauma that everything caused. Like, not just our Guardian, but like, I mean, we haven't gotten updates from a lot of people. Like, I want to know how Asher's doing, because Asher was already kind of traumatized by stuff. And
the Vex.
Yeah, I mean, like, the Vex thing, his whole fear of mortality in general, like, that's a huge story that's not been really updated much. So like, it hurts to say that, but I don't see that getting tied up until the end of not this season or even next season. I think that's going to be a while before we get anything further. Now, whether or not, I'm just trying to think, because the other thing is we haven't had a lot of updates on Fallen, and so I'm hoping we get that, and that's gonna, that we have kind of, we have whispers. We have whispers of development with that, with the whole, was it the maintenance log entry, where Osiris has told Saint 14 to go meet with the House of Light. So like there's murmurs there. There's a lot of cool political possibilities there, because what happens if the city makes a ruling to let the Fallen exist, beside them? I mean, that would just be, it'd be just so interesting. How did that work? You have Fallen coexisting with humans. I mean, you already kind of have Fallen coexisting with Guardians insofar as the House of Light. So to me, seeing the city kind of embrace that logic would be really interesting to see. And
I don't think...
Go for it.
I don't think we'll see a culmination of the whole Savathun pyramid ship, but I think we'll see movement in the fall. I don't think we're going to see anything until then.
Well, and that's what Black Flag's kind of talking about too. Is he's like, does it even need to be tied up? I mean, I guess Green,
I would like to see stories finally get tied up, but that's just
but I mean, that goes back to the whole point of the story too. Is like, the story is an ever evolving thing. So,
but it'd be nice that they finished threads that they leave, and they did say back before Shadowkeep came out, we want to start tying threads up, right? And I really haven't seen that, other than finally this season we got story thread tied up of Fellwinter and Rasputin.
Well, Green, what do you think? Do you think they're going to tie it up?
Do I think they're going to tie up which part?
The whole thing with Eris and Mara and Savathun.
I don't know if Savathun will be involved, but I think Mara will come up again, and I think Eris will be a conduit for it. That's my personal opinion. I think that I don't necessarily think the Dreaming City storyline will get wrapped up in any way, shape, or form, but Mara is, even in this season, even within Trials and Tribulations with, what's his face from Mercury,
Vance.
Brother Vance's story, there's still a tie-in with Mara even in that. So I think she's still going to be a prominent player, even if it's in the background of things. I don't think they're going to just write her story off because she's too involved in everything.
Oh no. Yeah, I think her story is not going to get written off.
Do you think that Eris would be more of the person bringing Mara back than Petra?
Yes. Eris has worked more actively with Mara than Petra has, unfortunately, for Petra.
Well, Petra is a lieutenant. She's the one who's always done Mara's bidding, so she's not going to be the go-between, I don't think, with Mara and us. I think Eris has a lot more involvement in Mara's deeper plans than
and if you look
by long ways.
When you look at the Taken King stuff, it was Eris working Mara that, working.
Yeah, I guess
Petra.
my question there is because with Mara, she has the whole curse of the Dreaming City looming over right now, which has been technically broken, if I remember canonically.
I don't think.
I know. Like in the.
Are you meaning the truth to power aspect? Because technically, that could be
the curse
lies.
is still there. Yeah, the curse is still there. It hasn't been resolved, but
is the cycle still going? Because I thought that was the whole thing with Riven.
Yeah, the cycle's still going.
Okay.
The thing is you can actually
game-wise, they just gave it to us the whole time now because it's old content.
You can get into Shattered Throne the whole time. That's the big difference.
But canonically, it's still on that 3-week cycle. You know, Petra still moves through the city as the weeks go on, and then she resets, and everything comes back. You know, I don't go there because it still does the cycles.
So this was actually something brought up in other circles. Do we think they would get rid of the Dreaming City? Not necessarily right away. Not like the idea of Titan disappearing.
There's a line.
We solved the.
Go for it.
I think if the curse, it would go away because it's anymore. But then that takes away a whole lot of.
Content.
There's a line from Zavala that talks about since the reef is in so much trouble, it is an opportunity for the city to expand. So, if anything, we could possibly also see a affiliation between the reef and the city as you know, like.
Well, they were already kind of working on that through, you know, Petra and us and the things that went down. But
here's the difficult thing with the curse, and everyone's like they need to end the curse. If they end the curse, there goes an entire raid. And that is a huge amount of content. That's
why I'm leery about it disappearing, because of that whole tie-in with you lose that entire raid.
But do they? Because
they've never done that before.
No. I mean, okay, so like, I slightly disagree because you could still have the content with moving the story forward, like the same way that you still have heroic story missions as being a meditation. Like, I mean, gameplay wise, I don't know. I understand what you're saying, but like I've seen other games do similar concepts and it doesn't affect the story.
I think the curse ending is tied into Mara story coming back, Savathun and that sort of thing. We need all that to come back because Savathun's to the whole Dream City stuff.
But so, I mean, like, I'm just saying there's a way around getting rid of the curse without having to sacrifice the raid.
Like you could put like a raid.
It could be an like
director thing, like the Vanguard strikes. Yep. You could do something like that, I guess. That's true.
And Stealth Vixen's saying this in chat right now. But like, you know, there's heroic strikes that still have
Cade in it. Yes,
have Cade.
Well, you look at the arms dealer. It's still Cade.
It's still, I mean, it's Cade. The arms dealer is, most of the strikes will have those. And that's because I think, you know, I've always kind of understood those as being kind of, after you run them for the first time, they kind of become similar to the way that they did the heroic story missions back.
With the meditations they're
just like meditations and remembrances. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see them doing that. To advance that story, I don't think we'll see something until Savathun's actually, I'm not really passing that through properly because I don't know how to describe it, but like Savathun continuation because of how tied in to the story of the Dreaming City she's been. Like, yes, it's kind of moved on to, you know, I always gotten involved with the Festering Core and stuff, but kind of the core of her plans, her
storyline.
Yeah, because, you know, she sent her daughter to into the distributary, and that's where kind of, you know, Shadow to Throne stuff takes place. So. Oh,
with the Duel and Caro thing? Yeah. She sent...
Like, she's still tied directly into, you know, that's tied directly to Savathun.
Yeah.
So until we get movement on that whole thing, I don't think anything's going to happen Dream City-wise. I'd love to see something, but I get it. Yes, the community would lose their poop. Yeah, pretty much.
Do you think there's going to be any evolution of Guardians?
Oh my gosh, I hope so. It goes back to my think that goes back to my answer about like the concept of like darkness, right? Is like, I would absolutely lose my mind if we could have like, even if it was aesthetic, like, you know, we read all this stuff about in the lore of all these guardians with like these personalized supers and stuff like that. I think it would be really cool to see something like that, and to have it like reflect like, you know, the personality of the guardian, or, you know, however you want to frame it. I think that if we could get it where, you know, like I was saying, like, you know, you have a bounty board where it's like, all right, this is the bounty, you have to kill him, but you have a choice of going this way or this way. Seeing like a scale of how many guardians did, you know, the quote unquote light path versus the dark path, or, you know, like something like that. I think that would be really cool. I just sadly, I don't see it happening. I don't know if there's enough hardware or resources.
I don't
to
think
do
there's
it.
enough built into Destiny for that.
I think you could do it. But yeah, I just sadly, I don't know if they have the bandwidth to do it.
I just don't think there's in the game to do that right now.
What do you think, Green?
Oh, I would love to see it.
I don't know. I don't know at this point. Do we think we're going to get any sign of Uldren?
I hope so. I hope so, because I'd love... I mean, yes, we got that little lore tidbit, a ship from the Dawning, and I like redemption stories, and that, you know, Destiny is one of the better ones, right? There isn't really room for redemption stories.
That one in itself is one of the more powerful ones.
I think Uldren's story is done. I don't think we're going to get more. I think they had that thread there. You talk about how Bungie has so many open threads that they won't finish those stories. I think they create those threads as an emotional draw-in for a lot of different stories, but I don't think that those threads are necessarily all going to be used, because there's too many stories out there that could be finished, that they take the direction of the primary story where they will, and have these secondary stories that they have the option of telling. For years, we were told that we were going to get nothing on the Iron Lords, and look, we have a whole book
DLC.
Devoted. And that, I mean, not just the DLC from Rise of Iron, but this whole season is not only about Rasputin, but also about more of what happened with the Iron Lords and the story with Fellwinter. So it's an option. Do I think they'll take that option? I doubt it. I highly doubt that Uldren is coming back in any capacity. With the way that lore card, that little tidbit that everyone talks about, I don't think they're going to bring him back. I think it's too easy to just use that as the ending point and just call it good there.
Yeah, but the Hunters still deserve a Vanguard.
That being said, though, that is also how, you know, they write those deliberately that way too, right? Because that's the whole thing with Shin, was that John wrote those all so that they could be the one ending if they needed.
Yeah, stories hanging so that they can go look at the Fellwinter stuff and the Iron Lords. That was left as story threads hanging long ago. Now they just address them again and tie them off.
Because that same argument, Green, you could say about Mara too, right? I mean,
in some ways.
I mean, Mara is such a large character. I don't see that happening. But technically,
leaving her threads alone. Yeah.
Well, no, but I mean, like, technically, the last we heard was everything was wrapped up for the most part with her, and she went somewhere. Like, you know, I mean, same as what happened with Taken King. As far as most people knew in Taken King, up until recent, she was dead. That was the end of Mara's story.
Yeah.
You know, and then lo and behold, she came back. And I think Mara is of such importance to the story. I don't see that happening, but I think that's a deliberate action on a lot of their stories because of the uncertainty that the future that the future has. So, but I think also
it's an interesting.
Oh, go for it.
I was just going to say it's an interesting concept to write an open story like that where there isn't a hard ending. but knowing that your story could be picked up at any time and where it's going to continue and how it's going to relate to everything else going on in the world.
I can't imagine how, like,
that's got to be really hard to do.
I can't imagine how that feels to the writers. Like, I know, like, because when we talked to John about the whole thing with Shin Malphur, I mean, he has the story written pretty much in his head. Like, he said that he's got quite a bit of it written that we will probably never see. Like, he has an ending that he knows where it goes. He knows what's going to happen and all that. Now, whether or not we get to experience that in game is a different story. It's a different story. But, like, you know, I can't imagine how that feels, having writing a story and then, you know, not being able to see
it's not going to be finished.
The closure of it. Yeah. I think that would be,
it's got to be hard, because that becomes your baby, you know. You want it to see it through to its end. So
there's that, and then there's the talent it takes to write a hook that is ended well enough to be on its own, to stand alone, but also have that ability to continue.
Tie into the rest of the story too, like tie into the rest of the universe.
I mean, in some ways, there's still individualized stories, like the whole Iron Lord thing. If I remember right, it was Jill during the round table was talking about how she has stories about all the different Iron Lords in her head.
That was Jill. We'll never see. It was.
We'll never get those aspects.
Because I think wasn't that about their names? I think she was talking about, like, how each one of them has, like, different meanings behind their names and stuff.
There's that, and then there was the aspect of, like, what's Peyrune doing, and how did her story come to be, and where did these warlords come from? Like, we may or may not ever get actual background stories to these characters, but there are plenty of those kind of characters that are fleshed out in these writers' heads. But they wrote their stories, the Iron Lord stories, in such a way where you're only going to get a snapshot.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to write that open ending to where, like with the Almighty, we had the closure with Gaul, but there's this Almighty sitting by the sun. What's going to happen with it? Well, this season we find out it's going to get hurled at us like a slingshot. So they have to be able to utilize what's still left open in the universe and create a new story with that as a primary hook. And I can't imagine having to do that. It would be a very difficult challenge.
Oh yeah, and I think that is part of the reason why we see so many of these loose threads, because when you have a team of writers and, you know, the team of writers is not consistent, which, I mean, no game has a consistent team of writers. They always change. That's just normal. But, like, you know, when you have that going on, you have to give, you know, it's almost like I kind of am starting to see it almost like a professional courtesy of, like, hey, here's a new writer. What, like, instead of making that new writer have to completely introduce a completely new character and a completely new hook and all this new stuff, they're like, here's a thread about this content. Why don't you go down this road or something? You know, it's kind of like a icebreaker, I guess, if you will, for the new team. But then it also allows the older teams to me, also the other thing that I just kind of thought of too is it also allows the other team to have the freedom to move around. If someone's writing on Fallen and they want to take time to write on Cabal, I don't know the functionality of the politics of how all this works. That's something internal politics that Bungie probably has figured out. But, like, if you have people who want to change stories, I could see that almost like being a way to allow that between the seasons. Because we know that the narrative leads are seasonal. Because I know, like, John Toe was the narrative lead for Shadowkeep, and I just blanked on the dude's name, or the name for Season of Unworthy. And then I know there's someone.
Guy wrote Black Armories.
Guy was Black Armory.
So was John.
Yeah. And they're like, but, like, and I know when I talked with Guy, or, you know, whenever I talk with him and chat with him, he's always very clear that it is not like one person's leading it. It's a group effort, but it's like, there is that kind of sense of, I guess, first among equals comes to mind, that concept.
More a collaborative thing than,
right, yeah.
One guy's telling everybody, this is the way it's going to be. You got to fit into my vision. It sounds like it's more.
It's more of like a big team get together, but that to me makes the whole thing of the loose threads make more sense. So
leaving loose threads, leaving loose threads makes it easier for them to pick it up.
It makes it more seamless. Yeah, it makes it more seamless. But Green, do you think that's a good place to I kind of want to see if we have, I kind of want to put a call out for people if they're still listening and they're, they have their own theories. I would like to hear them. I want to see people's thoughts. And even if if we get enough people interested, I might put together like a small article on the website of different predictions.
Sure, that sounds like a good idea. I'll put a call out on Twitter, and we'll get that out there.
But are you good if we jump into shoutouts? All right, Gar, what shoutouts do you have for us?
You guys, thank you for having me on the show. Shout out to the guys I play with in my clan. I'm in one of the Dads of Destiny clans. Clan's one of the oldest ones that Dads of Destiny has. The only older one is the first Dads of Destiny clan. So shout out to the guys that put me through go through the raids and stuff with me and learn about all these cool lore stuff. Yeah.
Awesome. Green, what about you?
Family for letting me play video games as much as I do.
Shout outs to the families who are very understanding during these times. It's one of those difficult situations where everybody's in it together and your family may or may not be great at working together during the normal times, but this situation is definitely going to make you look at it a little more closely and how you interact with your own family members and with other families. It's certainly an interesting time. So shout out to the family members of any gamer, podcaster, life coach, I don't know, just families are important. Be around your family.
Very patient with me with these when I go on the podcasts, because I do one on Friday too. That's why I miss most of your guys' show. So
gotcha.
And for me, I just want a big shout out to everyone, kind of same as Green, the patience and everything, as everyone kind of figures out the new flow, or the new, as everyone's kind of referring to it as the new normal. It's a learning experience for everyone, and the patience has been really cool to see, and to experience. And we have been on the receiving end of that patience, and it's much appreciated. But yeah, so I really, that's kind of the extent of my shout out. And as always, I just wanted to thank you for your time. And until next time, remember, with wisdom we conquer, stand strong, stand tall, and keep exploring. With that, we'll begin to wrap the chat up. Thank you again to those over on Twitch for coming to spend your evening with us. If you'd like to join us for the live streaming of the episodes, please be sure to give us a follow over on twitch.tv/FocusFireChat. Links to all our episode archives can be found at www.thelorenetwork.com. Please be sure to email us at focusfirechat@gmail.com with any comments and or questions for the team concerning the podcast, and let us know how we're doing by giving us some feedback and a rating over on iTunes as well. So until next time, focus your fire and may your light shine bright.